straight. No, contact.
Hold the line.
5, 2, 3, 9. Yep, direct taking fire.
Hello guys, welcome back to another year of Foxhole, I guess. Well, at least another year of us ranting about Foxhole. That's for sure. So let's keep the ball rolling here. I want to introduce to you guys my co-boys here every time we do this. The orc, the legend, the arty god, Mr. Dark Leftovers.
What's up?
That's it.
Okay. Then we have your favorite commissar in the entire world. It's Avatus.
Lord de Callahan, brothers.
And of course, you can't miss the bravest squirrel around. That would be Kaczynski.
Welcome. Greetings.
Right. Well, there's... I think I should start off with, we've been on a small break, holidays and whatnot. But we're back and we have some stuff for you. I don't know where to start. There's not a lot happening in the actual game, but there's a lot happening outside of the game, I would say. That's the best way I can describe the state of Foxhole right now. So let's just move directly into the current war. I think we can talk a bit about it, even though we didn't participate that much. At least in my case, I don't know about you guys.
I mean, I'll be completely honest with you. I haven't really played Foxhole for a good few weeks now. I played at the odd time for the odd op and stuff like that for a couple of hours, but I haven't really committed a vast amount of time to it. For reasons I'll maybe get into later in the stream, but I don't really. This is going to be a learning experience for me as well as other people. So
Yeah, I'd have to echo that. I've done a couple of ops kind of here and there through the break, but it's kind of all run together. Outside of playing for a couple hours on Saturdays, I've not even been checking Foxhole stats. I have no idea what's been going on. I hate to confess, but this war, I'm out of loop.
Mr. Dark, have you been? Oh, okay.
I mean, I tried to do something yesterday and absolutely fucking backwatered into our faces, but other than that, it's like, the will to play Foxhole is definitely dwindling down. Or at least the peak interest of it, you get me? Like, it feels like that whole... Since the clan is not in a full-time commitment anymore, I just feel like, well, I could do anything else I want to do in my life, Sometimes I have these urges to play Foxhole, but I learned to suppress them to play better games.
I mean, it's sort of like what I imagine like getting released from jail feels like. You know what I mean? Finding that freedom, and you're like, oh, there's actually other games out there that I get that rush from playing. I go on squad. I have a great time on squad. I don't get frustrated at squad. I love it. And it's come out of it with PTSD sometimes, but Foxhole is not that game for me anymore, unfortunately.
Right. I'm gonna dive into this more deeply because I think this is a very interesting topic to discuss for us here. But to be consistent with the war update, though, in big lines, this is currently a relic war, which basically means for the ones of you that have been playing Foxhole for a while, it means that the devs recycle the relics again. They put them back in the game and they pack them as, a relic war. And, it depends on who you ask. People have different takes on this. Some of them are happy. Some of them are less happy. New people, I guess, are the most happier because for them it feels like, they just introduced all these cool vehicles in the game. they've been here for a long time actually. But yeah, that's and as long as as much as the war goes, it's a pretty balanced war until now, from what I noticed. It's just shadowed by I feel like there's these groups of really dedicated players that have sticked to it, and they're really involved and really they have a lot of pride going into the fight right now. But I don't for the average general atmosphere of it, it doesn't feel like people are that like. I don't know. I just think like I don't see the general enthusiasm I normally see, if that makes sense. I don't know if it makes sense for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of really dedicated people, and I see a lot of really new people that don't exactly know what's going on, but they're enjoying their game, which is incredible from my point of view. But that's about it about the war update, if you ask me. There's not much more to tell you than that. There've been some nice pushes from both sides, some good conflicts, clashes of armor and such. And yeah, we'll keep updating you as things develop. What I really want to move into here is, because we already sort of started talking about it, is the break, right? And when I talk about the break, I don't mean only DK or only us or such. It's sort of a general break for many other groups mainly. I'm not going to talk about the average player or such, because like every time there's a sale, new people are going to be coming in, and that's normal. But for groups at least, I think it's an interesting discussion to have.
I mean, I think that in the past, the way that Foxhole has always gone is that we go through these periods of inactivity between big patches. Yeah, that's normal. That's what's been going on for the past 4 or so years or whatever it's been. And then you get a sale, like you said, and you get a massive influx of players. That's translated into the recruitment of the clan. So we know how many big portions of players are coming in. Now, we have got a few new recruits over the past week, so that there are new players coming in. My worry is that a lot of them are not going to stick around because of the lack of presence of organised resistance and things like that, because people are just not playing the game who are experienced enough to teach them. There's a lot of knock-on effects from a lot of veterans not playing the game. Is because they're not passing their knowledge along, and in Foxhole, that is absolutely necessary in order to keep a portion of the new people that have just got the game playing the game long term, is understanding the game early on, so they don't just get frustrated and put it down. Because I can assure you, we're losing a lot of percentage of players now because they simply do not understand the game. There's nobody there to teach them, that sort of thing.
I don't know that that's necessarily true, because I still think there's enough vets out there encouraging people. I mean, that's how people are still finding their way into clans, is finding some level of engagement. I think the burnout pattern will continue for them like it has for most other people. But I don't think that there's such a dearth of veteran players that's not occurring in some way or another.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere in the middle, probably. I don't think there's, you can't ever have enough veteran people in a game, but at the same time, there's still a good amount of them to keep the ball rolling. Although it's just like, for me, it always saddens me to see the toll that this takes on those people, and mainly it saddens me because we had a lot of examples even in our group of people that have keep going out of this ambition to win, or the ambition to help people and whatnot, and they ended up just like getting into a point where they just said, yeah, I don't want to play Foxhole ever again. Like, maybe I'll just hop in once every 5 months to do some stupid shit with you guys, but then after 2 hours I'm fucking uninstalling it again to make sure I'm not jumping back into it. That's sort of the stories that really kind of make me sad. And for me, I think this is why we sort of get to the point where we say, yeah, well, I guess the entire clan has to really take it easy for a while, because it, like where I see it personally, I see it in events, right, in operations, in trainings and stuff like this, and there's always a point where people are like, don't want to be there is basically it. They don't really want to be there. They just show up because they feel like they have to show up because of the clan and whatnot, and you don't really want that to happen, right? Like in a group, especially in a big group, you don't really want to have people there just because they feel like they have to be there and they don't really feel like they want to be there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we got a pretty good sense of that from our officers very openly, right? I mean, I think we've seen a lot of our officers kind of in that boat for a while, which is why these breaks kind of happen when they do and how they do.
So I'll throw in something a bit about the title here, because I named the stream the Foxhole End Game Year, because this is the year 1.0 comes in, and basically we're in the end game now, boys. And I don't know. I personally don't know how to feel about it, considering we're starting with a break. As any important thing you do in life, the first thing you do, you start with a break.
Yeah.
So yeah.
If the stars align and when Foxhole hits 1.0, everything is what we dreamed it is, then we're going to be glad that we had this break, because we're going to be playing Foxhole for a long time. So that's a dream that I hope that I will never lose, but I somehow think it's getting further and further away, because every time I log onto the game, the only thing I'm thinking about is logging off, really.
Yeah, as soon as you log in, it's just a timer of, okay, when's the next bullshit thing that happens that makes you want to fucking leave.
Right. I'll go ahead and thank Antraxon for being our our number one supporter still. He's been supporting us hard.
He's been with us at the very start.
Yeah. You're our MVP, my mate.
Spicy meatball.
You got to think us. I know Avitus is cringe.
Spicy meatball.
Indeed.
But it's a good cringe.
Spicy meatball.
To keep on track here, I do have a small clip that has been circulating. Well, I have multiple clips. I don't have only one, but this has been circulating a lot, and it comes from what KFC had to say in a press corps. Was it press? Yeah, it was press corps. I was just trying to make sure. Yeah. I actually have a lot of stuff to bring up from press corps today. I hope Geoffrey doesn't mind. I really think he doesn't. I personally love to check him out, and this time I've identified some stuff he and KFC went over that I personally would really want to discuss with you guys. I feel they're really interesting. But before we dive into that, this is KFC talking about the price of the game, from what I understand, and I think it's interesting to discuss what he says here. So I'm not gonna wobble more. I'm just gonna play the clip and we'll discuss after. Give me a sec.
I'll post a link to the press corps for everyone. So if you can catch it or if you can attend it, most of the time Joffrey hosts a. He has sometimes the devs aboard, so if you ever want some dire questions you want asking, it's definitely a great platform to do it. So I'm just giving them a little shout out there.
The expectation here is that over time the game becomes worth more. Like, this isn't, a lot of our players have spent $20 on this game way back when it first came out 4 years ago. It's worth more than $20 now. There's no question about that.
I'd say so. Yeah, I agree. It's at least $25.
Exactly. Who knows what the business guys will say, but the ultimate expectation.
Right. So yeah, that's interesting, and for me it's interesting because I thought about it. Right? Does Foxhole worth like more than $20 right now? And for me personally, if you take it from how much work they put into it sort of perspective, and you only look at that, then I understand why he would say it worth more than that, right? But if you look at it from the perspective of what the game is right now, I would personally say the game I bought for $20 was actually worth way more, and this game that they're selling right now is actually worth less. That's how I feel about all of this. And again, like, I'm not putting into the balance the amount of work they put in, right? I'm just talking about the game. Compare that game with this game and figure out which one would you pay more, sort of a thing.
And you guys can quote me if I'm wrong, but isn't it the opposite though? The longer the game is out, less it becomes. You get me? Like it's worth less because as the more and more years come up, there are better.
Yep, that's the thing. It's not
more
out.
advanced games. Like
I feel I can help you with this. So what they're going for right now is sort of what other games do, where they constantly add more. Like they add more, they improve the game in such a manner that it's more and more valuable. Let's say without doing DLCs, they just add stuff and maybe raise the price, right? So that's their business plan, right? They're trying to go with the mentality of, we started with this game, it was pretty bare bones and it was cheap. And now, because we introduced so much stuff into it, the prices goes up because it offers so much more than the game we were selling for $20.
Right. I understand that too, but it's like I feel like they get their most sales from Steam sales. You get me? Like when the game is worth less, they get more people actually buying and playing it. It just goes to show, like, at least in my mind, what I'm seeing is like people they see the price of it.
I think you cut off there, Dark.
Oh, whoops! I don't even know where I started, but long story short is just, more people seem to want to buy it at a cheaper price.
I mean,
at least people that are interested.
I'm trying to take myself out of all of the experience I've had on Foxhole and try and put myself in the shoes of someone that knows next to nothing about Foxhole, watched a YouTube video on it or something like that, thought, oh, that looks like a good game, and buys it today and plays it today, and it takes a very casual approach to it. I can see it being worth $15 for that experience for 10 hours of gameplay. You go in, you play as an infantryman, you have a little bit of fun for 10 hours, and then you put the game down for another year. That's worth $15, really, when you look at the value of games and stuff like that. When you put we've had our value out of it. We've had more than our value out of it. But fresh people playing the game that are going to have 10 hours of gameplay, it's not worth more than $15. And people that are buying it for more than that, I don't think it's going to have its value. Now, I think it's wrong to say that Foxhole today is worth less than when we first started, because when we first started, there was a lot wrong with the game. That we just had a lot more faith that it was going to get fixed somewhere along the line. So there was a lot wrong with the game when we first got it, but then I think it went up in value, a couple of years ago when Foxhole was at its golden age, I like to call it, and then it sort of depreciated in value, but it's not quite back down to where it was when we first got the game, in my opinion. It's still playable and it's still worth 10 hours of gameplay. It's just not worth any more than that. Or any less.
No, I would agree with that. Just my general equation is if I can get 20, if I spend $20 on a game, I'm expecting to get anywhere from 20 to 40 hours, and I feel like that's a decent deal typically. And I've definitely got my money's worth out of what Foxhole has given me. And it's really the play box or the sandbox that Foxhole has given me. For all the frustrations that the game offers, the core concept that it offers is sufficiently unique to engage a really powerful experience. And where we're so disappointed is that we see the tremendous potential that's untapped in that, even now, right? Where what we had could continue to be so good and so enjoyable, and we're just not seeing that potential realized. So I guess, that's kind of where the value proposition comes into my head, I guess.
Sort of to respond to what Avatus was saying, I think you are right. I think there is a good dose of feeling and sentiment and believing into the game back then, which kind of makes me say that I think it was worth more then. But at the same time, the way I've looked at things is through the eyes of not necessarily only my eyes, but through the eyes of people that were playing it back then with me. Like a good example is Logi players, right? Logi players have always been constantly arguing that the logistical game was somehow better then, even with the bullshit limitations, because like as we were discussing in a former stream, you had to camp sulfur fields because they would spawn in every 6 hours and whatnot.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I think there's definitely points like those that sort of justify saying, well, it's not really fair to say it was worth more then. But like you said, probably the correct answer is somewhere in the middle, in the golden age there, somewhere before they decided to change direction and take the game where it is today, right? So I do agree with you. I think that's the correct answer to this question. I think the biggest value was somewhere between then and now.
I think between, if I remember correctly, don't quote me on this, between was 18 and about 25, I think I'd have given $100 for Foxhole because it was that good back then. You know what I mean? It was awesome. And what it was compared to what it is now is just like, it's such a crying shame. You know what I mean? That's what it's like. My entire frustration about this sort of thing is it's such a shame where the game is compared to where it was. And the new people getting the game, or the newer people that didn't experience those wars, won't understand where people that have been playing the game for a long time are coming from when they're saying that those wars were like the peak of Foxhole. It just really was, and it's just a shame that you can't really see that coming back in the future.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point, because like a lot of newer people are like really frustrated with the amount of complaining and whining the veterans do, right? They're like, they can't understand why would people just constantly complain and complain and complain. And it's fair, because like for them, and I want to add here what Weatherby was saying as well, you can't really find another game like this. So for them it's like, well, there's no other game like this, and from what we're saying, it's okay, right? We don't see why you guys have to complain about it every 2 minutes for so long. But like you said, they can't experience the enjoyability, or like they can't imagine the game being this way better version of itself, even with less. Because like I think the case is here, less was more, right? Back then, like we didn't have all this cool content, but it was good at the same time, even without all this content. Sure, even back then we were like lacking a lot of quality of life and so on and so forth, but I dare say at least there was like, I don't remember this question of balance and bias being brought up every 2 seconds. Do you guys? I don't remember it being like that.
No.
Well, we didn't have asymmetry back then either.
That's the thing. That's the thing. That was the nail in the coffin. That I think asymmetry was a big mistake. Like, think of all of the shit that asymmetry has led to, all of the drama, all of the community disruption. It was just a bad thing to put into the game, and I can't see why they ever did it, because Foxhole worked so well because of the balance of the technology of the factions, because everybody had the same thing. They might look a little bit different, and what I think they could have done is maybe change the small arms to like a Warden's, getting their own MGs and stuff like that, and Colonials getting their own model of MGs. But that's as far as it should have gone, really, in terms of asymmetry.
Yeah, I do agree, and it's interesting. Sorry, Kaz, I'll leave in a second. We'll actually look at the clip talking about symmetry. Go ahead, Kaz.
No, I was just going to say, it's one of the things that we exhausted quite a bit when they first announced asymmetry, and it's a little self-serving to relook at that, but we were very concerned about that when it first was announced. So that's very, for a lot of the reasons that have manifested themselves, and that it's just a very Like, it's the most difficult balancing concept to achieve is an asymmetrical balance, and huge AAA companies can't pull it off. And not to be insulting to this group of developers, but that's just a very ambitious project for the manpower that they have deployed against it.
Yeah, and again, not to go back to it altogether, but the proposed solution from their point of view to add enough vehicles that balance is not necessarily an issue is like extremely hard to buy for me personally. Like, I don't understand how having this huge amount of vehicles vomited into the game is gonna make balance, because in the end you can add 2,000 vehicles per site, right? From those 2,000 vehicles, somebody's going to make a tier list and they're going to say these vehicles are A plus, these are A, these are B, these are C, these are F, totally worse. You know what I mean? Like,
and even worse than that, there are vehicles out there, even still, or at least when they even got brought out, that literally had no answer to them. At least when we didn't have asymmetry, like if the Colonials unlocked field artillery, we'd get, we could deploy mortars against them, or we could deploy, our own field artillery against them, or something like that, or it wouldn't be very long and before we unlocked that option. Like, now it's a case of, right, do we get bayonets or grenade launchers? Like, I've had this argument so many times in infantry chat recently, where I'm like they shouldn't, the squad normally complains if they don't get bayonets and stuff like that. So I say grenade launchers are an important tool. Getting a grenade launcher is a valid option, but also having the bayonet is a valid option because they're both essential to infantry gameplay. Why are we having that option there? You know what I mean? Between grenade launcher and bayonet, that is absolutely ridiculous. That needs changing as a priority, and I'm glad I remembered to say it.
This is very interesting because, I need to say it as we're going to progress into the next topic, where I have some clips prepared from Press Corp. The guys have not seen them at all. Like, they have no clue what I'm about to show them. But what we're discussing right now, you guys are going to see, goes exactly into what these clips are talking about. So it's incredible that everybody is talking about the same stuff in different mediums, and the weird part about it is, like, you'll see there. I'll just start with this one just so we have context. The discussion in the clip is going to be about the medical supplies. So similar to the bayonet grenade launcher dilemma, right. The dilemma that the clip is going to present is, why are we not having access to medical supplies when the war starts immediately, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be very interesting to see the answer from KFC to the clip, right? That's going to be the interesting part. And then we can discuss, like, I personally have some question. I think you guys are going to have some question. And I'm hoping we'll probably talk to Joffrey, see if next time he gets KFC over there, maybe he can even, ask him about it. Because I'm extremely puzzled about it. So I think we're going to start with this clip. Let me just set it up real quick.
I mean, personally, don't think that anything like bayonets or medical supplies should be locked out by a tech. They should be available from war start, in my opinion.
I agree, and I think this is at least talking about the medical part. This is what Joffrey was arguing in this clip. Let's just watch it real quick. I think it's easier.
I think one step that I don't think a lot of people will argue is making all medical tools available at the very start of the war. Unless that's changed, I don't know if that's changed for this war, but I'm pretty sure. Every war I go, yeah. Wait a second, why aren't first aid kits unlocked? Why isn't that a thing? What is that? That's not a pacing issue. That just encourages teamwork. I don't know. That's me. I'd even say go far as ambulances and that mechanic. But at the very least, first aid kit, doctor bag, plasma, and or rather blood, and the ammunition for that, the bandages.
Yeah, I agree. 100. Yep.
Well, Seeker, Nocturne,
So yeah, you heard it. He agrees 100%. So my question is, if he agrees 100% with what Joffrey said, why didn't they do it then? Like, am I crazy? I don't understand. I'm puzzled.
I'm guessing he was probably the only person that agrees
Yeah.
on the development team. Probably why.
Yeah, because it's interesting because like Dark said the same thing, right? Like, well, he probably was talking from his point of view. But my next question to that is, why would the rest of the team not agree? What are the arguments? Like, I personally cannot find any valid arguments to say. Go ahead.
The way that I'm thinking about it is right. What are the proven ways to drag the war out a little bit longer and get the prime length of war that we want? Right. We need more tech layers. Right. So what have we got that we can tech the different options and stuff like that, and look at the list and say, right, on average that'll give us this length of war, and then they'll say, right, well, we need more tech to lengthen the war a little bit longer to what we want it to be. So they've got medical supplies in there, and they don't want to take them out because that's a tech level, you know what I mean, which buys more time to eke out the first stages of the war to make it a little bit longer, so you haven't got 40 guys coming rifling down town halls and shit.
Yeah, well, that's not possible anyway. But yeah, I get your point. I think that's a valid explanation from me. I don't think they're ever gonna admit to it though, because they've been staying away from that topic as it's lava or something. But yeah, and I, like at the same time, like I don't know, and I don't think this is the only way they can. I understand this obsession of theirs with making long wars. But I think this is the worst way possible you can achieve it. Like
infantry tactics at the moment are very, very circumstantial. There's not a lot you can do infantry-wise against defenses. You can, grind it out with, covering fire and HE grenades and stuff like that. But ultimately, your squad's just going to get cut to ribbons by a guy with a rifle off to the side or something like that. It's very, very hard to attack defenses as a squad anymore. It has to be a rushed Zerg that sort of penetrates a line somewhere or something like that. When you're taking away one or the other option from grenade launcher or bayonet, that's cutting your infantry tactics in half again. So you can either stand at range and just hammer them with grenades, or you can press the advantage with bayonets. You can't do both anymore, which is very, very detrimental to infantry tactics, in my opinion, especially to randoms, because whereas before most randoms would have a bayonet, and if they've, especially in trench combat, bayonets are very, very a good thing to have, and now they're few and far between, and it takes so long to cycle the tech around to get in bayonet, so you're not getting a bayonet until you've got a battle tank on the field. You know what I mean? So it's absolutely craziness to me.
Dark, Cass, you guys have anything to add on this?
No, I mean, just I've spared no words about how robust defenses are like man defenses are right now. Defender's advantage is profoundly overwhelming at the moment for a whole variety of reasons. And yes, as an infantry guy, it's just not fun to play infantry right now. I just hate to say it. It's just very difficult to enjoy the infantry experience because you're not really fighting the way that you would enjoy to fight. You're fighting against these really robust defenses that require a high execution with like a high coordinated execution with a lot of explosives that are not enjoyable to deploy. So like for the first part of the war, you're just literally running 30, 40 HE grenades at defenses and run it. Like that's the most effective thing you can do to make progress. And that's just ridiculous. Like it's not a good gameplay experience.
Yeah, I feel like we've already expressed a lot how we feel about defenses and whatnot. It's things like that it takes away, like it discourages you not to play the game. Like you're better off doing something else with your time and wait until you have those tools unlocked. You get me? So like it in a way, it like prevents you from wanting to play the game until we get satchels, or we have stronger artillery, or we have bigger and better tanks. And it's like the more I don't know. I feel like this is a very topic that just everyone knows what the opinion is, and it's just it will always be frustrating.
Right. So I'm going to move to the second one here, and I think it's fair to put the second one, the one where they talk about vehicles, right? So I think in the clip we can check once we put it back on. I know for a fact there was two sound guys that were involved in the discussion, so it was during their time on the call. And one of the sound guys asked KFC about the vehicles, right? I think he also offers some examples. We'll see in a second. So I'll try and resume it like this: like if the Colonials have the mortar half truck, right? Will the Wardens get some sort of equivalent of that? Not necessarily a half truck. It can be a Jeep. It can be a truck, whatever. But something that fits as a counter to that, right? And we'll watch the clip, and then I personally have some questions again. I think you guys are gonna have some as well. I'll set it up real quick here.
But something I was thinking about was we have all these vehicle variants with the new arms race update. I was wondering, although each faction has their own specific type of vehicle, wouldn't each faction have some type of equivalent? Not something that is the same, statistically speaking, but something that feels like the same role. Like a good example to me for that, actually I have two good examples for this, would be the AT armored car and the heavy armored car. They both fill kind of like an AT role as an armored car, but they also have their own strengths and weaknesses. And the other example for that is the tractored armored car, sorry, I'm forgetting the name of it, and the tankette. They're both off-road armored car variants.
Right.
So are you asking if like would you suggest that, or would you make tweaks to that?
I mean, personally thinking here, I would say, would we ever see a Warden equivalent? Maybe like, not a half track, but maybe like a truck equivalent of like the mortar half track. Or would the Colonials have maybe like a tank at 40 millimeter?
Yep, for sure. That's the ideal, actually. I think what we have with what the example you raised about the AT, sorry, I'm not going to be using the right names. The and the AT rifle armored car versus the heavy armored car. Those two are maybe perhaps too symmetrical, because I prefer what you suggested, that like if the Colonials have a I don't know, like a very highly defensive half track, that the Wardens might have a highly defensive light tank, right? Like that's what I'd rather see. And then if that's not balanced, like obviously it's not, then the Colonials should get something else that perhaps is along the same vein but slightly different, that feels like it's filling a same or similar niche that the armored light tank might fill. So yeah, that's basically our philosophy. That's exactly how we'd like to go.
Right, so he says that's basically their philosophy. Now, I have one question immediately that comes in my mind, and I'm extremely sorry nobody in that call actually thought of asking it. So if that's their philosophy, what stopped them from pairing up these vehicles when they introduced them in the game? So if that's the end goal anyway, why didn't they pair the Colonial Mortar half track with the counter on the Warden side?
You mean as far as like development cycle is concerned?
Yeah, I mean, so they said, from what I understand from KFC, he said like the goal is, if we put in the game a mortar half track for Colonials, the Wardens are going to have a different type of vehicle that is going to be able to do the same thing, sort of, right? To be able to counter and balance the Colonial half track, right? My question, right, and what I cannot understand for the life of me, is why not add both at the same time and creating balance by adding one and just leaving the other one for the future. Sometime nobody knows if and when.
Am I the only one that feels like they go through a rhythm where let's just use the dev streams for example. When they do vehicle reveals, like there's always either some minor ones and there's one big one for one faction, and they always did that where, oh, okay, we're going to show you 3 Warden shitty vehicles, and then we're going to show you one good colonial vehicle, and vice versa for Wardens and Colonials. They do that like that, and that's just something that I feel like that they have always done. Whenever they release something, unless it's carbon copy, it's like, oh well, Wardens get Silverhand, and then a few patches later, oh, the next big vehicle is going to be the Colonial Tank Destroyer, and then a few patches, and then you guys get what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I get it, and maybe Weatherby has a point as well, because he's saying they really don't care at all about winning or losing the war, which I'm convinced they don't. But I hope they care about the turmoil, right? Like, they can't act like there's no turmoil over this constantly. So why won't you try and, like, you don't care, right? It's fine. You're a development team. It doesn't matter for you who wins and who loses in your game. I can accept that fully. I can understand that. But from there to like not taking into consideration the amount of drama and overall turmoil created over these topics every time is a bit on the offside. And also, like, what's to lose? Why do this thing where you're making one side happy and the other side mad all the time? Why not give both sides a good vehicle? In the same thing, so they're all happy.
I think what it comes down to, and it's going to be a pretty disappointing opinion, I'm afraid, but I just think that this comes down to yet another time where they just haven't really tested what they're putting into their game properly in a proper setting, where it could be, properly estimated what it's going to do to a front line sort of thing, because they don't test anything anymore. They might test it internally with like 3 of them, on a dev server or something like that, messing around with the values of the vehicle, but they don't actually test it on a front line until they see it in a war. You know what I mean? And yeah, I understand that the game's still under development or whatever like that, but you reached we're years into the game now. There should be some sort of like pre-testing thing before it goes onto the live server, surely. And I'm convinced that a lot of these vehicles, like you said earlier, I'm going to quote you, Razor, because that was an absolutely excellent phrase. They've just vomited vehicles out at this game, and it's turned it into an absolute mess of drama and people saying, well, that's OP, this is OP. And they're right in some circumstances. The Silverhand, OP as fuck. OP as fuck. The Mortar Half-Track, OP as fuck. Both of those vehicles won their individual wars, in my opinion, when they first got released. Actually, the Mortar Half-Track, they might have got beaten back, didn't they? I can't remember, but it's...
So the way it works is, in order to get something changed, like this is the new meta now. Whatever faction has the disadvantage, they have to cry and moan about it constantly to them, and they'll do something about it. So in the case of the Mortar Half-Track, what they did is they pushed it down the tech tree real low now. It unlocks closer to where mortars unlock, right? And that makes them, that makes for a really good nerf for them. But I'm sorry, I can't say this happened because they did an analysis or they did testing or anything. They always do it because one of the factions is crying its eyes off about it, which is a really bad way to balance anything, in my opinion, to be honest.
I mean, it's so frustrating because they've got the community there to test this stuff. It's not like it's out of the realm of possibility for them to have a committed bunch of people from the community, if they asked, to test this stuff before it gets put on the live servers. So it's not a complete train wreck. But they didn't do that, and it's too late for that now, in my opinion. The vehicles are already in the game. The game has fundamentally changed. We can't go back. in my opinion. They like when they said, "Oh, we're testing out asymmetry." I always remember that, testing out asymmetry to see how it goes. They had no intention of going back. They can't go
No,
back
yeah.
now. You know what I mean? So they weren't testing it out. That this is how it is now. And I hope, really, really hope that we get the game that we always dreamed of when it gets released. Because I did love Foxhole for what it was, but what it is now is just like it's a struggle to play. I play for the clan and very little else.
Yeah, I personally just hope, and I'll do my best to try and obtain answers for like all of these for the medical one. I personally still want an answer because, even like you said, I think it's a very good point. They put no effort into testing them, but okay, you sacrifice that. You don't have the time, you don't have the manpower. I can understand that, but put the same archetype at the same time, right? Like what they're doing is basically, to put it in Company of Heroes terms, right? Because we like to go to Company of Heroes. They're giving a faction like overwhelming artillery, and on the enemy faction, literally no commander has anything to counter that. You know what I mean? Like that's the situation, and that's my question. I don't understand it. Why would you ever do that?
Here, have a field gun that can shoot 20 meters. Cheers. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
Answer to our fucking prayers.
They're pushing you into breakthrough tactics when you need artillery. It's basically what it is, and I think I kept the more complicated one for last. But I still think it's important to give it a small go ahead. I'm gonna need to give a bit of background because I don't want to bore everybody with a 10-minute clip. So the discussion started over the respawn timers, right? The ones that go up to even 50 seconds, and you have to wait almost a minute every time you die. And like Kaz said, for infantry, that's the death of enjoyment right there, right? And the question was on the lines of if KFC can explain or go into detail about how do they arrive to these timers, how they get established, right, by the system. And KFC responds that he cannot do that because it's a very complex algorithm that takes into account multiple separate parts of the game. He explained a very complicated system that nobody wants to understand really. And I honestly don't understand why they needed to complicate it so much. But moving on from that, it was interesting because the discussion evolved to something else completely that is very dear to my heart, and I think to your heart as well, where, as we will see, Joffrey asks him about the need of secrecy, right, regarding general stuff in the game, not necessarily the respawn timers, right? Secrecy about how things work, right? I'll give an example. How the tank armor works. Like, it's extremely secret. You don't have anything about it. You don't have any health indicators, health bars, no details about almost anything at all, right? And well, I guess we'll talk about it after we see the answer, but you're not gonna like it. It's the spoiler I'm gonna give you. Let me set it over here.
I had a sense that's where this was going.
Seeker, Nocturne, feel free to cut me off. It's your call. But in terms of going back to that philosophy you had about kind of needing the necessity of providing ambiguity, just because you don't want people to game it too hard, or you want players to approach it a certain way. Isn't that philosophy kind of problematic with both the sandbox and also just with the alpha nature of Foxhole, where we're trying to figure things out? I don't know if we can give you feed. We can't. It's difficult to give you feedback if things are just so ambiguous in terms of the tools provided to the players. Hello?
Was that directed at Nocturne?
I'm sorry, no, that was to you.
Oh, does it mess with the sandbox? Yeah, I think it does. But that being said, I mean, if you're going to be on the winning side of a conflict, with 10 times the number of players as the losing side, is it not also affecting your enjoyment if the other side is just given up? Like if they just don't have a chance because they're completely outnumbered, like doesn't that affect your enjoyment of the war as well? Like maybe it does impact the sandbox element of being overwhelmed, but I think that this is one of those parts of the game that's difficult to balance. It's not difficult it's difficult because it is one of those realistic problems that we can't solve because it's a video game. It's similar to the reason why when you have to border travel, right? When in a real conflict, you would have a set number of soldiers on either side that doesn't increase or decrease. And in our game,
they'll definitely decrease.
Yeah,
but
in our game, one player who plays 10 hours is worth 10 times as much as a player that plays 1 hour. And we can't control how much time players are putting into this game. That's ultimately the problem we have to resolve, is that we want both of those players, the one that plays 10 hours and the one that plays 1 hour, to feel enjoyment. And without having variable spawn timers, that I think that both sides would inevitably find the game somewhat lacking.
To, I guess.
Right. So, I mean, aside from the obvious that he was not paying attention at all, and I think this is my biggest grip with all of this. Like, nobody actually told them, but wait a minute, you didn't answer the question. Like, your answer has nothing to do with the question.
Well, it's just, I mean, I've said this time and time again. They're very, very good at, like what politicians do, where they answer the question without answering the question. Like, they think people are stupid, but like we can see right through it. But you're just polite and you don't say anything. That's what's going on there. You know what I mean? And anybody with a brain can see that. And it's just frustrating when you care about something so passionately, and the people who are creating it are just sort of like have a very half-assed attitude towards it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh God, like what am I doing?
Yeah, I mean, again, first frustration for me is nobody stopping him and telling him, wait a second, like the question was not about respawn timers. The question is, why does everything has to be a secret in this game? From like, the health of things to everything else. To explain a bit, because I know I didn't play that part. It was sort of in the beginning of the question. He offered some explanation regarding this as being they want the ambiguity because it's what they want, so the players don't meta game too much, is what I understood from it, which is hilarious. Like, people are just like going nuts on metagaming right now in this game, and they always will. Like, again, I'm not asking for exact HP in like percentage, and but like you need to know at least. I'll give an example. At least some sort of indication that your armor is depleted or close to being depleted, right? Like at least some visual indication. If you guys understand what I'm saying, not guessing. Like even like any way you wanna turn this around in real life, in whatever, you would see marks of the armor degrading, right? Not in Foxhole though. It's a extremely guarded secret about how many shots you can take. Or like
I do think like, well, they had that limited sort of thing where when you got disabled, you'd have white smoke, then you'd have fire, and then you'd be blown up. But that's about as far as it goes across the board, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
The transfer from smoke to fire, and that's the only health indicator you get.
Also, real quick, sorry. Like the thing that you jump out of the vehicle, you hammer it, and all of a sudden you know it's HP, but from inside you don't. Like, how does that make sense in any way, shape, or form? Like, what I mean?
I think the way that they'll say is they'll say, "Oh, right, well, you're getting out and assessing the armor sort."
Yeah. Wow.
But what I think they should do to sort of catch it, sort of like best of both worlds, is have, especially on vehicles like tanks and stuff like that, heavy armored vehicles, have a sort of system where it's like the same as damage states on buildings. when it's at 70% health, it goes down to its second damage state. When it's at 50%, it goes down to its third, and then it gets disabled. Blah blah blah. All that type of shit.
Sure, that would be like light years better than what we have now. I don't see an issue with that. But again, like for me, aside from all of this, is like the big frustration here for me is always that nobody's like telling him, or like any of them really, just like stop for a minute. You just like missed the question completely. Like, I don't think it's rude to do that. I know why people are acting like,
It's a big deal.
Exactly, like, oh, you can't ever tell them, like anything that contradicts them in any way. I don't feel like this is healthy. This like fear of asking for your question to be answered, or at least the acknowledgement of them not wanting to answer it. I don't think that's bad. Like, you don't need to be impolite about it, right? Like, you can get to the conclusion that they don't want to answer it, and even him saying, I don't want to answer this question is fairly acceptable. But I think there's a huge difference between saying I refuse to answer the question and answering something that has nothing to do with the question, right?
Yeah.
It feels really really frustrating, at least from where I'm coming. But yeah, these are the clips. I hope you guys got some from it. I was extremely disappointed with a lot of it, to be honest, because for me, I can't help but feel like it's an indicator of the state of the game and the direction of the game, right?
I mean, I've come to expect it by now, dude. It hasn't disappointed me in the slightest, to tell you the truth. It's just I've got no feeling towards it at all, because I fully expected what was going to happen there. It's not the first time that I've seen that type of shit. Good questions being brought up and sort of like grazed over with politician speech. It angers me, to tell you the truth, dude, because people are the guy who asked that question, like, and this question before that, those guys, you can hear it in their voice, dude. They're passionate about the game, and they want to know the answers to these questions. They want the questions to be thought about, and when you're not even listening, it's like, oh God, what does that tell? Like, what does that tell you, man? It's like, it's so frustrating to listen to.
Yeah, and what makes it more frustrating for me is, and I don't want to take away from this acknowledgement. I know a lot of people give them a lot of credit for having the openness to at least try and listen to people and discuss with people, a thing that a lot of developers don't do, right? And I think that's actually worthy of being credited to them. But in the same breath, I think it's important to note that if you're showing up to listen to people, but you're not investing, you're not invested into their questions, and it's almost similar to
what
not being there.
What if you only listen to the people that answer yes to your questions? You know what I mean? Like, are you really taking on board criticism and changing things for the better? If you just if you sort of you only really take the opinion of people that are going to agree with everything that you're implementing and just think it's the best thing since sliced bread. I'm afraid that's not the case. You've got to encompass everybody in the community, even the people that are giving you a hard time. Sometimes the people that are giving you the hard time are the most passionate people about the game, and I just can't for the life of me understand how they haven't got that.
No, yeah, they interpret it in such a wrong way, and I do understand though. Like, on a human level, everybody, sort of reacts badly to people, being confrontive, like, entering in a confrontation with you in any way, even with not agreeing with you, or calling you out for stuff. But at the same time, it's like, this is like I said it, and I'm gonna continue saying it openly. This is why I personally champion Julian out of the team so much, and I appreciate and like him so much, and it makes for such a cheer for everybody when he shows up in a stream or such, because he's like the only one I've witnessed until now which has a laid off attitude, and you can see he can take jokes. He takes jokes and does jokes about themselves, right? Doesn't take themselves seriously every 2 minutes like the rest of the team. And I think that's very important. I think somebody like Julian should be running point on this PR stuff and showing up to answer questions like this, because he has the correct attitude and the correct character for stuff like this. That's what you want from a community manager, in my opinion. Somebody who can laugh firstly at himself and then at the entire team. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with taking the piss about yourself, right? And people respond to that extremely positive, in my experience. I personally like every stream when Julian is there is way more enjoyable for me, just because you have somebody who doesn't act like he's the best thing since sliced bread.
I mean, I get the reason why they don't want to expose too much shit. They don't want to be too open with the things that they're like talking about, things introducing like trains and shit like that. Like, they should never have even talked about that until a few months before it happening, really.
Agreed.
And I understand why they want to keep things secret, but keeping them secret right up to the deadline is a little bit silly, in my opinion. Like, they'll maybe introduce them like the patch before, with the war still going on, and then introduce them in the next patch or a couple of patches down the line. You need time to assess the vehicles before you I mean, they have enough time really to get up a few servers and have the vehicles tested out in an accurate setting. And I think if that had happened earlier, we wouldn't be having problems where they're not interested in losing a war, but a colonial plays a war and gets trounced by silver hands, and you might lose 10 veteran players that think that's enough with Foxhole that war. And then you go to the next war, and the Wardens get trounced by mortar half-tracks, and you lose another 10 veterans. And that's gone on for several wars by this point. So now you're seeing a real degradation in the veteran community, and I think we're going to suffer for that down the line.
Right. Well, it pays to say we're close to an important update, which I know a lot of people are waiting for enthusiastically. And because we're at that point of the discussion, we could probably look towards the one development update we actually missed last year. We didn't get to talk about it. Mainly we didn't. I mean, I personally didn't push everybody to unite to have a stream about it, and I would rather just wait for it, because the entirety of the stream development update is one slide. That's all I could gather from it. That was the development update, basically. This was the development update. They added another relic to the game. Basically a huge toaster with 2 cannons on the side.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I don't really know how to respond to that, to tell you the truth.
Toaster?
I don't even.
I mean, looking at it in game, it looks like a giant tub, just like.
How big is it? How big is it?
It's like bigger than a. It's like the same size as a Colonial light tank, just a little bit more taller.
Yeah, it's basically taller. Yeah, I guess.
I could have forgiven it if it was like struggling to get into a bridge. It was that big, but like.
You said tub, you attracted Iowa now. Oh god.
Oh my god. Yeah, I was gonna make a remark that it looked like something came out of Iwan's farm, but.
Get the sticks. We'll have to beat him off.
Get out of here, shoo! Get out of here, Snail.
So this thing has 2 40mm cannons either side, I'm guessing, and then does it have any other armament?
Nope, that's just it. It's got a hefty amount of
Mm.
slots, though, the most compared to any other light tank or tank of its class. I mean, six inventory slots.
Yeah, I mean that's like, I mean, I could again, same story as everything else on Foxhole. In a niche situation, maybe this rolling across the bridge into abandoned ward with infantry support, and the enemy don't have AT equipment or something like that in a supporting role where they can run up and grab medical supplies, ammunition from it, and things like that. Maybe I could see this thing being useful, but that's a very
Well,
niche situation in itself. You know what I
it
mean?
does have 6 slots. Huh?
Yeah, but, I mean, what are you going to put in the 6 slots? I mean, the tank shells
One
are
of
already stacked.
600 tank shells.
Yeah. Oh my god! Yeah, you would think that. Good god.
I mean,
I just like I can only imagine the horror of just looking inside it and being reality of, and this is just me being 100% honest, with 2 of those 6 slots being dedicated with like 200 shells, and that's just like why. I mean,
This
like
this is a question though. How tough is it?
well, again, this is mostly hearsay because we didn't really get our hands into them, but that's pretty tough. I nowhere close to BT. I think
it's stronger than an upgraded colonial light tank, but weaker than a colonial BT.
Right.
Somewhere in the middle.
So it's relatively tough then. Yeah, I mean,
But it's the
early
slowness
one.
that.
Oh, is it slow?
Extremely
It's a
slow,
little
yeah.
bit
Right, okay.
I find it extremely, but for a tank, yeah.
To use it effectively, you kind of gotta bob and weave. You get what I mean? Like
You got to have a lot of infantry support because you're going to get like annihilated by sticky grenades, aren't you?
Well, the meta for this war is blobs. Like colonials are putting together like 20 tanks of all kinds, like all of them in one blob, and they just like blob in, and then the wardens flank from the side and blob them out, and it keeps going like this for over and over. From what I saw.
I don't know. I can't see it being useful, but I mean, maybe early war it could be useful.
yeah, I like the look of
late.
it. I like the look of it as like like the first type of iteration tank. Like just thinking about it in lore wise. But like I'm just trying to like input like in our histories, World War One, when the British made the side barrel tank like this, it wasn't made for like open combat, right? It was just made like it was on the side, so it goes in the trench and fires down the line of it, right? Am I correct to say that?
This is more designed, I think, more like a German World War One tank, because the German World War One tanks were a lot taller than the British ones. Like the British ones were designed for crossing trenches and things like that, but these types were a lot taller. But I think they had heavier cannons in them or something like that. I think male and female versions. I think they had like one with machine guns and one with like 40 mils. So
yeah, well, I think it's important to note what God is saying as well. This is, at the end of the day, this is a relic tank. So you'll see it once, maybe twice a year. Who knows? So
that's just maybe that's just me. I don't know how you guys feel about it, or if you guys talked about it. I didn't pay attention, but why is there a rush, or it seems like there's a rush between the devs to get rid of relics? Like, just have them, keep them there. Like, there's no like, you get me? Like, it's not gonna cause harm.
You know the answer is similar to what Avitus offered as an answer with the medical stuff. It's just because it's that ace in the hand that you just use when you need some filler, right? Like, okay, boys, like what are we giving them this month? Well, we don't really have anything. Relic War, just press the button. Relic War, activate it.
I mean, I get you on that as like using it as an excuse, but it's just sad though. It's like I don't know what to say. It's just.
That seems to be the case. Like every time, because like remember this update that is gonna come later this month or next month was normally in December, right? It would be the pre-holiday season update, right? And this year it wasn't possible, so they were like, okay, let's whip up a new relic vehicle and it's a relic war.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll have to see during the next couple of wars if this is going to be. Have they already made a claim that this is going to be for a couple of
Absolutely.
wars?
Yeah, no, not a couple of wars. This is one war only. It's going away. We'll probably have one or two of these a year. Made it perfectly clear.
What I want them to do is when they release this new big new update, make it a mech war. Put the mechs in there again, because I just want to see how much more attention it will draw if they plaster those mechs on the front page of the Steam sale or something like that. God, it will just be overrun. Please do that.
Yeah, I know how much you want that, but I'm sorry to say that almost certainly not gonna happen. We all want that, and again, I don't know. Every time this comes into discussion, they giggle about it, and they say like, like that's like taking this into like steampunk, and it would be like, what would be wrong with that?
You don't need a degree in marketing to know that's a fucking good idea. You know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah, it doesn't fit apparently with what they want, and it's a crying shame. Like we've discussed this in the past, and I still believe you are perfectly right. I think this like mech twist on the game would have attracted even more people to it.
Would be the saving grace.
Yeah,
would have been the saving grace, dude.
And like there's so many angles, even for balance and stuff. Having mechs in there, having them powerful, because like nobody can cry about the mech being overpowered. That's the idea. That's why it's a mech. You know what I mean? Like,
maybe have like three of like, instead of pumping all of this time into all these different types of vehicles. Like, imagine if they'd have devoted all of that time to create like 3 classes of mech per side. You know what I mean? And I could get the asymmetry nowhere else in the game apart from in the mechs, and I think that might have worked if you'd have had three different classes of mechs that countered each other in different ways and stuff like that. That asymmetry could have worked, but I think other than that, it's obviously hard. But I think that the mechs would have been so good, man. Like if they'd devoted the time that they devoted into these useless fucking vehicles that have just caused drama into something like that everybody wanted. I haven't heard a single person say that they wouldn't want that. You know what I mean? Not a single one.
Yeah, I know, and this is probably something that we'll be crying about for a long time, because it's no secret. Everybody sort of gets excited. Like, even if you look at, I think Iron Harvest is a great example for that matter, right? Like, because it wasn't that crazy of a game. Like the the similarity to Company of Heroes is like obvious for everybody. The one twist that it has is mechs, and everybody like went wild. Like the press coverage over it, oh my fucking god! Everybody was like talking about nonstop. Iron Harvest, Iron Harvest, when it's going to come out? We need to play that. We need to buy it. It was pretty sad, because at least the release was not that great of a game, but still, like the atmosphere around it and the enthusiasm around it was like nuts.
Yep. And it's so frustrating because they did such a good job on those mechs.
Oh, yes.
They're like the best looking vehicles in the fucking game.
Like, yeah.
Why?
That spider tank, which people still argue about because it doesn't have enough legs to be a spider, but I still like to call it a spider tank. It's like my favorite vehicle ever, at least design-wise. It looks so fucking good. It's incredible. It looks incredible.
It actually stands out, you know what I mean? Like, if anything ever gave you that feeling of Foxholes of uniqueness, it's that, you get me like looking at the spider tank as it walks and crawls, you know what I mean? Just being like, wow, imagine if the game was more centralized like this, instead of just have like these, because you look at it, you have no connection, so you're not going to similarize, the tank with the like World War II or World War I tank, because it looks exactly like its own thing. Like you can't compare it. So then it gives it its own identity, which is like
it's unique. Yeah, awesome. It's unique, and I think I bet you could do the research on it. Like maybe we'll even fucking do it at some point as a small gag here on No Man's Land. We'll give like random people that know nothing about Foxhole. We'll give them pictures of like the normal tank and the normal vehicles, and then pictures of the mechs, and just ask them like, if you were to play a game, and the setting is like between world wars or whatever, what would you rather have? Would you rather have these vehicles and the generic ones, or the mech vehicles? What would you choose? And like Avid said, it's very hard for me to imagine that you're gonna have a lot of people saying, "Oh no, I just want the generic stuff. I love that shit. That's way better than your mechs."
I mean, you can. Don't get me wrong. You can get properly immersed in Foxhole. I just think that like there needs to be like the argument for we want it to be semi quote unquote realistic sort of history sort of shit. It doesn't. It's not like a first person shooter, for instance, where you feel like you're there in the moment, and it's very important to have historical accuracy and stuff like that. That's why but not a lot of people like Battlefield and stuff like that, because when they're in the setting, it didn't feel like the historical setting that they were fighting in. But in Foxhole, we're in a completely different universe. You know what I mean? And it was such a good design decision to do that, to create an entirely different universe, so nothing felt like it was infringing upon historical accuracy. That was the correct thing to do if you were going to make a mech game, and put the mechs in there, and have a little bit of leeway in terms of technology and capability of the empires at the time. But instead, what we're getting is don't get me wrong, generic warfare has its place and it's great, and I've had a lot of fun on Foxhole over the years. But adding that extra layer would have just where you've got something above what anything in a normal historical setting has, and you've got that extra level of tactics above that, which is obviously mech combat and how to deploy the mechs and things like that. Would add that extra layer that would just be phenomenal, I think, and it would really cement Foxhole as like a really great game. It would probably, if they did it correctly, have taken the place of what people expected from something like Iron Harvest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that. I don't know. I'll end on. I always try and end on a positive note, right? Because we sometimes go for the doom and gloom, but it's important, as with all things, to try and stay positive. We'll see what the new update brings. There was a lot of attempts to hype it up and promise big stuff in it. It's important to say that it is the last big update before Foxhole 1.0, and hopefully whatever comes next in this. I want to put optimism in it, but I want to be realistic as well. I don't think that it doesn't matter how big the update is. I don't think it can magically fix everything, but there is still hope for steps in the right direction, rather than keeping course towards the iceberg we're seeing. At least maybe it's not, but that's what we were seeing, and we're not just gonna imagine it's not there, as a lot of people choose to.
I get what you're talking about. Oh, you go.
My hope is fading, but it is not faded. I still have something there at the back of my brain that I can claw out if a miracle happens, but I'll try and stay optimistic to the best of my ability.
So
yeah.
I get that feeling of uncertainty, and it's a very shitty design choice that they really chose to be more secretive about their big plans, because no one likes not knowing where they're going, because it's all about, you get me. It's like, I don't want to bring Game of Thrones into this, but It's like if I would have told you how the Game of Thrones would have ended, would you still would have started it up from the beginning? You get what I mean? Committing so much time and years into watching this show that you've enjoyed, you had ups and downs with it, but then once it finally reached that end point, and you just feel like you just got treated like you know what I mean, like they didn't care at the end.
I mean,
They just wanted to end the IP.
I'm not going to answer that because it's going to be like another hour before we're going to end the stream if that's the case. Because that's like it's like painting the Mona Lisa and throwing a bucket of shit over it once you're finished, isn't it? But
Yeah.
let's just leave it at that.
That's just my 2 cents. It's like if you want, you need to have everyone on the bus happy, letting them know where you're going, but you have everyone on the bus looking at where you're driving, and it's just like, yo, like I don't think we're in the right part of town, buddy. And it's like, nah, that's fine. No, we're gonna keep going through here, and then we'll end up in our destination.
We're going where we're going, okay, boy?
Right. So depending on when because momentarily we have no indication of when the next update is and so on and so forth, but it's safe to say we'll at the latest we'll update you guys once the update drops, and we'll have a stream to comment it and to see if being optimistic was a good move. But until then, guys, like as always, don't forget you can always send us questions and stuff. There's a channel in our Discord that is open all the time for anything you guys wanna ask, or if you wanna bring any topics to our attention and so on and so forth. And yeah, like have fun. Dark, Avitus, anything juicy to add?
My faith has been lost in certain people, but not in Callahan. Never in Callahan. Maintain your faith, brothers, for we will have final victory.
Indeed. Nothing much to say here. Just fucking move on with our lives. Hopefully, we have something more interesting to talk about.
And don't forget now, small arms do nothing to defenses, so.
Small arms do nothing, so join the HE rush.
Way to end on a high note right there, reminding everybody of that. Oh, God.
Well, I had to say it, right? Because like people constantly forget. Because we normally say, rush out of those foxholes, stop hiding like little babies in there. But now that bullets do nothing to those foxholes, like I can't say that, right? So
get back to the fob, grab a bunch of HEs, and get ready.
Yeah. Exactly. We're gonna rush those foxholes, boys. Have HEs at you at all times.
Some of you may die. Catch you there, guys.
Have a good one. And cook those grenades.
Mm-hmm.